Fables is one way we learn about our world, and this episode is all about fables, writing, and crafting characters. Prawin Adhikari joins in to talk about his new book, Budhani, which is based on Tharu folktales. We talk about the concept of refabulation and how he uses it in the book. Prawin Adhikari writes fiction and screenplays and translates between Nepali and English. He is the author of The Vanishing Act, Folk Gods, and the co-author of Shared Sacred Landscapes. He has translated Indra Bahadur Rai's short stories into English as Long Night of Storm and Han Kang's novel The Vegetarian into Nepali from the English translation by Deborah Smith. Thank you for tuning in to How'd You Create That? The podcast is supported by the Open Institute for Social Science. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, follow us on Instagram and LinkedIn. And we are also on Substack with curated writings from the podcast on creativity and the creative life. I'm your host, Alfa. So my first question to you. Welcome and thank you so much for coming.
We've been talking about this for a while now.
Yes, it's been a long time.
I think so. Yeah, we were supposed to meet for The Vegetarian.
Yes.
Now we're meeting for another book entirely.
Exactly.
So I think we can talk about all the books.
Yes, we can talk about all the books. My first question would be, secret ke ho? You've been writing so much. Like, you are one of the few writers I know जसले चाहिँ कति धेरै काम गर्नु भएको छ के. You've produced consistently stuff out there. What's your secret? के खानुहुन्छ?
आफैले पकाएको खान्छु most of the time.
Okay.
Which is actually tied to the secret also, if there is one. Which is spending as much time as possible at the desk. Ass on chair position onto the layer, yoga. You sit down and you do your work.
Yeah.
I guess our secret is I have to earn a living. So I have to keep working. And I have very limited sets of skills. त्यसैलाई employ गर्दै अब दालभात कमाउनु पर्यो. So I write, I translate.
What about writing? Tapalai चाहिँ के मन लाग्यो about writing? Like, what made you want to become a writer? Or did it just happen?
This is a very difficult question to answer because you have to reach into your childhood in order to find the truths. But the problem is you articulate the answer as a grown-up with like many decades of experience behind you. And that is where you tend to introduce lies, I think. Sort of valorize yourself. I think the most honest answer would be I became a writer because I loved to read. And I think I loved to read that much at that age because that was the only escape available to Balama. Only a few families in Kharini had television screens. Most of them video halls चलाउनको लागि ल्याएको थियो. एक दुईजना could afford satellite discs. त्यो पनि रामायण आएको भएर दूरदर्शनमा. And then Mahabharata आयो.
Yeah, पछि.
So moving images बाट नयाँ संसारको नयाँ कुराहरू देख्न पाउने भनेको was rare. I guess what I'm trying to say is if I hadn't been as a child somebody who wanted a greater escape from my surroundings, not in terms of like I wanted to leave that place, but just for the mind. The mind wants to go places. I think that was what sort of compelled me to find new things to read. And you do that as a child, and then at a certain point, I think if you read enough, you develop your own inner voice also. And then that prompts you to begin writing. And I got that bug pretty early on. My teachers at Budhani also encouraged that. Nepali padhaune, English padhaune. Your teachers, they always encouraged me to write. They gave me permission in some ways. They said that I could. That I wrote well enough that I could be given a prize, once in a while for writing the best short story or writing the best poem. And त्यो भएपछि I think that sort of also really like encourages young writers, you know.
Yeah. True.
त्यही भयो अनि बानी पर्यो अनि after a while, like the kind of escape that you find in reading is also available there in writing. Writing is not only a way of beginning to understand the world outside, but it also is the most efficient way, I think, of beginning to build the world inside you. So, everything you write is just part of the scaffolding that sort of from the inside is building you up as a person. तिम्रो sense of aesthetics or moralities, आफैले through that exploration of any art form, if through the exploration of that जुन साधना भनिन्छ नि, कसैले सङ्गीतमा गर्ला, कसैले चित्रकारितामा गर्ला, कसैले अब कविता लेखेर गर्ला, कसैले एसेजहरू लेखेर गर्ला हैन. त्यो गर्नु नै actually is the slow process of building yourself into a being, into a person. भन्ने गफ मान्ने हो भने त्यही हो, त्यसरी नै हो.
Yeah, true.
I think that's the reason why.
The inner world, absolutely. Tell us about your new book.
Which one? Yeah.
This one.
Budhani, right? म यहाँ आउनुभन्दा अगाडि I was talking to Pranav Mansingh. He and Shivani Singh are the publishers. Exactly यही नामको किताब थुप्रै.com पनि छ. Exactly the same folktale.
Okay.
But theirs is a slim little children's comic book.
Called Budhani.
Budhani नै भन्ने. मेरो यो चाहिँ करिब 40,000 शब्दको अङ्ग्रेजीमा र थारू भाषामा कति लामो छ एक्ज्याक्टली मलाई थाहा छैन, तर इट्स लाइक सिमिलर जुन चाहिँ इन्दु थारूजीले गर्नुभएको छ. There is a school in Dang, श्री बालजनता हो के हाई स्कुल, अनि म चाहिँ बुक बससँग त्यहाँ पुगेको थिएँ. This is in 2018, and Srijanalaya and the Actors Studio were showing a play there about a crow who is wronged and has to go confront the king. But that was based by Anup Baraldai as a director on two folk tales that Krishna Sarvaridai had collected from his own village. And so these are very brief two folk tales. One of them is about a crow. No, sorry, not a crow. There's another bird. It wasn't a crow. A mother who has to fight for her chick goes to the king. The king draws the line, get a circle in the ground, and then tells the parents to sort of fight over the baby, and then whoever pulls the baby wins, kind of. But that's a trick thing, and then because a mother wouldn't pull her child if it's hurting the child, and the father would. But then the wisdom of the king is that no, the mother gets a baby because the father was willing to hurt the child and the mother wasn't, right? And that's a universal story, right? You find that in a lot of folk traditions. The second folk tale involves a really clever child named Budhani. And in that story, she has to trick the king repeatedly. So the king asks something like, grow me a pumpkin in a pot. And then she does that by like putting pumpkin flour inside a pot and letting it grow. And then she brings the pot to the king and she says to the king, eat the pumpkin without breaking the pot because the pumpkin may belong to you, but the pot doesn't.
Is not yours.
Right? Yeah. And the king says like, build me a palace in the sky. But as a very clever little child, she has been helping little ants, little birds, animals of the forest. So when she is confronted with a challenge, the animals, the insects, everybody that comes forward to help her, they carry everything, all the construction material, up to the sky for just long enough for it to resemble a palace in the sky. And then she tells the king, yeah, go and like live there if you can. And then like, the king is defeated again, so on and so forth, and finally saying the king imprisons her and forces her to starve to death. But again, the insects dig a tunnel to her home,
to help her.
and then like she goes home, eats nicely, comes back, and she
okay,
doesn't get skinnier and does not die, doesn't starve. But then she manages to kill the king, and the king's son is so impressed that he marries her, and she becomes a queen, kind of idea. So these are the two like folk tales.
These are Tharu folk tales.
These are Tharu folk tales, but if you look at other folk traditions around South Asia, elsewhere also, you'll find them. But Anudai had taken these two stories for Srijanale, so that's like Shaurya was also involved in that, and created this play, which the players from the Actors Studio then took to the high school where the book bus was going.
Okay.
And I really liked it. And I think what impressed me the most was how he had taken two separate stories and sort of combined them into one. So I said to Pranav, like, I'm going to write this into a long short story, maybe like 12,000 words, 15,000 words, kind of. I had just finished, or rather, I should say, SAFU had just like published Folk Gods, which is a retelling of folk tales from around the Kailash region. So I thought like I'd do something similar, but with the Tharu stories. But when I started writing it, I floundered a few times because in my mind, the kind of story, the way I wanted to tell the story was more reminiscent of Amar Chitar Katha style. So it was more like a comic book ko lagi likhne jasto. And for that, I'd written characters that were like exaggerated folk story characters. But I wasn't quite happy with that. And then one day I decided to abandon that and imagine life from the very beginning, but as a little crow chick.
Oh, okay.
And if you remember, that's how the book begins, right?
Yeah, it begins with the crow.
Yeah. And I enjoyed the process. And so I continued writing it, finished it during the COVID lockdowns. And this pachi, we approached Induji to translate it into Tharu, but we told her since I took so much liberty with whatever was the source material, and there were so many different iterations of the source material, right? It wasn't just Krishna Savari Dekho folk tales. It wasn't just Anudai's version of the play. And Rochak from Mahila Battimani, he and his team had transcribed the dialogues from the play, from a different performance that I hadn't seen in Naval Parasi, from which the performance in Dang was different again, slightly. So there are so many iterations of the source. And I can't claim full authorship of the book. Similarly, when we asked Induji to translate the book, we said listen, don't think of it as a translation. Make it your own retelling. So I don't know specifically how much it has changed in the Tharu.
In the Tharu version.
I would have to sit down and very diligently with a dictionary go through the text. She says that she's included new songs in it. That's familiar to the Tharu people of that region. And there's so many there's such great variation within the Tharu languages of Nepal. So this book in the Tharu version is in Induji's language, written for her own immediate community. But then there's so many other people also involved. Chavilal Kopilaji edited Induji's text and sort of left his stamp in the text also. If you look at the cover, this is by the figures of Lakpan Chaudhary, but then Disev designed
Yeah.
cover. So many people have lent their. I mean, Rajni Thapa is the editor who edited my text. She cut down stuff that she thought was pointless and then made it tighter. So that's how the book has come to be.
What does refabulation mean though? Is it like retelling or I never heard the concept of refabulation before you told me, like, I think 2 years ago when we were having a conversation.
Refabulation. So I also went online and did some research yesterday. Apparently, let's say the idea of refabulating, especially among Latin American authors, it's gaining currency. Talking about fiction writing, but when I chose the word, I didn't want to write retelling, which is the word I used for folk gods. Folk gods was a similar thing where scholars went out into the field, they collected folk tales. They were usually between 200 and 300 words. And then I expanded them into 2,000 words. And in the retelling, I again introduced my worldview into the stories. But this isn't just that. So if you were to find the two folktales that, in some ways, the book is sort of derived from, you wouldn't recognize them in this book. You wouldn't see them in this book, except for that one part in the court where the king says, "Okay, draw that circle," blah blah. Right, just that action, and nothing else of it remains. So I have taken fables, but I've also refabled the fable. You probably, because you've read it, I can say this. You probably found things here that are fabulistic, that are fantastical.
Yeah.
That shouldn't, a rational mind would be like, "Ha, isto nansara," right?
But it's a fable, it's a tale.
Yeah, and in the context also, like, I think it works. A lot of people who've read it don't question, for instance, the switch between the two halves.
Yeah, right? It's a fantastical story, so it can happen.
Yeah. Even though within either of the half, the physics of that world sort of is maintained. And there are no dragons, but there are talking ants.
And there's Father Tiger.
Right? So I decided on refabulation a few years ago because that would then give me at least the peace of mind to say, listen, like, it was a fable. I've made it even more fabulistic again. It's also a way for me to claim the story while also being open about not claiming authorship, because I can't claim the authorship of the book. But I did do the work. These are almost entirely my words.
Yeah, they're new characters, I suppose.
Yeah.
Retelling of
retelling wouldn't have sufficed. Yeah? Retelling would have had to stick so closely to the template of the
original thing that is there.
That wouldn't have been enough material for a young adult book. And also the politics of it would have been very complicated if at the end of the book this like brilliant young woman who's defeated the king then decides to marry the prince to become the queen. Which is what happens in the story. So there's always that like pull of the patriarchal, pull of the traditional in the stories. Until I break Gornokolagi Pani. How do I do it? Right? So I didn't use the second story at all in some ways. Except for the very seed, quite literally, of the idea ki the fight is over, who owns what and how does ownership flow. I
see. True. A lot of fables, a lot of fables, Kupani fables, kind of.
Yeah. And also, it becomes an invitation for, I think, young writers in Nepal to look around, claim things from our context, and then expand on them. So your politics, your aesthetics can be contemporary,
Yeah.
but they can also be from this context,
this
which is exactly the kind of books, kind of like material that's missing. I mean, it's slowly growing. So, Nepali language, my young adult material लेख्न दिन थालेको छ for people like 12 to 16 को लागि पनि भनेर हैन तर अंग्रेजीमा त्यस्तो थिएन धेरै हाम्रो folk tales collect गर्ने तरिका was to go pluck as if it's a ripe fruit, bring it, put it on a platter, and that was it. If you look at Purano folktale kitabharu, these are all collections collected by but I don't think that suffices anymore. I think all the different ways of articulating our worlds, pluralities, we need people to take things from our context and refabulate
them and mix them and true. Why did you choose a crow? Like Suruma, you mentioned it was another bird, but
Playmai was another bird. Crows have always been considered among the clever ones, and they are, right? Punchnatrako kathaमा त्यो कागहरू हुन्छ पानी खानलाई ढुङ्गा हालेर घैँटो भर्छ blah blah. But I want to credit my friend Tuan, who, when we were in college, he was a fabulous ink and brush painter, and he painted such fantastic crows. Their intelligence like shone through immediately, and it took him like 2 minutes to draw one, doing all kinds of different things. So त्यहाँबाट पनि मेरो दिमागमा चाहिँ बसिरहेको थियो अनि पछि सोच्दै जाँदाखेरि I started thinking about time span. अब टेक्निकल तरिकाले सोच्दाखेरि if it's going to be the same king, then not a lot of time can pass between the two halves, right?
Yeah, if it has to be connected,
So त्यो भएर अनि I was like, what bird that's like clever everywhere, not really loved in our culture except like once a year. हैन अरु बेलामा चाहिँ धपाइहाल्छ तर एक दिन चाहिँ पूजा गर्छ टाइप्स अनि I thought like kag is nice.
That's where the crow comes from.
Yeah.
The first half of the book has so much about like crow world and vivid descriptions about that. So how did you embrace the crow point of view,
I don't think I have. It's actually the point of view of a young girl. And now again, I would like to credit my young women friends. Like Yukta, Sarita, Shefali were my neighbors. People who were living away from their parents' homes to make a way in the world on their own. Kalko. Ek hisable, Budhani is just that. You know so many friends who are just like that, no? Who like, for whom an aspect of taking on responsibility has been to move away from home and live on their own, get a job, pay rent, cook their own food, survive, right? If you, like, for a second, stop thinking of the first half as a crow's story, you'll find that it's actually the story of young women in the city.
Yeah. It feels like a coming of age tale. Like, when I was reading, I was like, oh yeah, I am Budhani, or I know Budhani. It does feel. But the crow aspect, there's a lot of descriptions about. There's one scene where the snake attacks and crow. How did you write that?
त्यो scene त गोवामा लेखेको हो हैन. त्यो scene, like, it's about 1100 words, I think. I wrote that in about half an hour. त्यो त आयो. त्यो अर्को पनि सिन छ त्यो दुईटा हाफको बिचको ट्रान्जिसन्स हुन्छ नि त्यो पनि लाइक हाफ एन आवर जतिमा लेखेको कोभिडको टाइममा. The question you asked goes to, I think, how do we imagine other people's worlds?
Yeah, exactly, which was a question I had when I first met you. And I still have that question.
त्यो एकदमै सजिलो आन्सर पनि छ र अलिकति कम्प्लिकेटेड बनाएर भन्न पनि मिल्छ होला. सजिलो आन्सर चाहिँ we are all capable of that if we practice it भन्ने हो.
Okay.
If we've been practicing imagining the world through the point of view, other things and beings, people, situations. Garo cheez haina. At all garo haina. You lead with your senses and you augment that with like what you call research or experience of the world, right?
Okay.
You know that crows eat worms.
Yeah.
You know that forest fires happen. You know how a mother might feel when her children are threatened. I don't have to be a mother to know that mothers feel a certain way when the children are threatened. Because my mother has told me that, hola, I know. It's written up, it's in so many stories, and all of that goes and like sticks to your mind. And when you sit down to write, it all comes to the front also slowly, in its own way. So that's not a very difficult thing to actually sit down and do. The difficult thing is to actually sit down and do it, okay? Which is the part where the practice kukura comes in.
Okay.
So if you have been practicing this, okay, for instance, it's very easy for young people to start off by writing poems or what they think of as poetry.
Yeah. Oh.
But the moment they begin to get good at reading poetry, they realize how bad their poems are.
Okay.
I know. And this much you have an option. You stop doing it, which is what the vast majority of people do when they grow up. They stop practicing that one art that they loved as a child. Or the other option is to sit down and keep at it. Sit down and keep at it every day, right? That's how you do it. That's how you imagine the world as anything. मैले recently substitute गर्न जाँदाखेरि स्टुडेन्टहरूलाई मेरो फेभरेट राइटिङ एक्सर्साइज दिएको थिएँ, which is to be the 10th momo on the plate, watching the 9th
getting eaten,
going up to the mouth of the eater, and write a small paragraph addressing
that 9th momo.
Oh, wow. And it's surma a lot of people are like, hey, how do you do it? But then like we talk for about 10-15 minutes and everybody's like, ha, of course we can do it. And then they start doing it.
Oh.
Because you lead with your senses. You imagine the heat, you imagine the sound, you imagine. And this telephone slightly recursive banayo, your imagination with the arco time ko, arco place ko memory leraidiyo, or projected kura layo, what might happen when you imagine lerai. And slowly you're building up an idea rather than just descriptions. And it's practice.
And you become the 10th momo.
Yeah.
Or a dragon.
That's the thing though. Like 10th momo, will it wait with trepidation? Will it wait with eagerness to be picked up? Yeah. You can choose that, right?
Yeah.
As the person writing it. Wow. You get to choose it. And that's the fun thing.
That's a fascinating exercise. Oh, I think the 10th momo would be very bored. I don't know.
The 10th momo was born among momos.
Yeah.
It came into existence when the last fold on it was pinched together. Then it was thrown into a big place with siblings, and then taken to the sauna, right? And then experiences a transformation inside and outside. This puts here a journey, right? Selected crew. I mean, those are teams, bro. Or artisana, depending on where you're eating.
Yeah.
So all these details that we just made up, they come from real life. They come from the world of people, humans.
Yeah.
So anthropomorphizing, you take these things and you slap them on. Just enough. Too much, just enough, and that's it.
That's it. But animals or like how do you pronounce Anthropomorphize. It's been a while that it's been going on. Like cartoons are stories are.
If you're going to say cartoons are then that's not been a while. I was going to say, like forever. As long as people have been telling stories, it's been going on. The whole point of looking up at the stars and seeing in them constellations that are shaped like animals is doing that. Is bringing animal world into our world. There must have been, before people decided to look up, they're probably looking around, no?
Yeah. We can always, oh wow. That's true.
Imagine the first time a human anywhere made a knot.
A knot. Okay.
How long ago do you think that happened?
Ages and ages and ages, and we don't know.
We can know, we can't possibly know, but we can imagine the very first time somebody deliberately understood ki I've made a knot which I can replicate again.
Okay.
But think about everything that follows after that.
It's also like fire. कसरी फायर बनायो
Sure, fire अब replicate गर्न सिक्यो भन्ने कुरा तर फायर त नेचुरली कतै भेटाउन पनि सक्थ्यो होला
भेटाउन पनि सक्थ्यो यार
तर यो ट्याङ्गलमेन्ट चाहिँ नट हो यसले गर्दा मैले बो स्ट्रिङ बनाउन सक्छु यसले गर्दा मैले मेरो छालामा पाल पारेर गार्मेन्ट बनाउन सक्छु त्यहाँबाट आएर के म पुग्छ राइट all of like nautical history, all the sailing that happens requires that. Jewelry requires that. Kaka puksa. Early mathematics ko highest like levels of people are dealing with imaginary knots. So you can make that leap
through time. So we can all write about other characters.
Yeah. That's how you become a crow.
That's how you become a crow, yeah. You
thinking about the first knot.
First knot, yes. And then you look up in the sky and constellation diksa. You see lions and you see crows. And then you become a crow. Adding to this question, a negative like villain characters are like kasari banaune. Also, again, of course, it's the same उस्तै हुन सक्छ हैन. It's again imagination.
I think it goes beyond that slightly.
But my belief is not like people in general are good, and हामीलाई negative.
I think that is one of the biggest lies that we've been
telling ourselves,
which is very useful. Telling
very
ourselves,
useful, okay.
Very useful. Society like them extremely useful kura that people are generally good one idea, and then we get trained to live like that.
Okay.
More say we contain all of possible humanity within us, very much. More say like absolute.
The whole spectrum.
Prince Mishkin देखि लिएर एउटा आफ्नै पेरेन्ट्सलाई मारेर पकाएर खाने मान्छेसम्म चाहिँ को सब चिज चाहिँ हामीभित्र छ भन्ने मान्छु.
Okay.
I mean, see, it sounds like very grandiose a claim. But I must say, each person contains the possibility of being anybody and everybody that's ever been, ever will be. So, as a writer, you just go and find that person and bring them to the fore. Of course, we censor ourselves all the time. And that is again a very necessary thing for society.
Yeah.
If there were no society, then there would be no need for good or evil. Let's say, yeah. So, just the garo cheez hoina. The garo cheez is to accept that you're capable of writing them.
Okay, that's interesting.
Because when you say like, oh, like I don't think I can imagine the most evil person, you are telling yourself a fundamental lie. Just like someone saying, you are capable of it. You're capable of being that evil person too. Okay. But the moment you begin admitting to it, all problems around. But you have no problem admitting that you can be the nicest, sweetest, like, goodliest person. You know? So the bias. The bias news, like somebody saying. I mean, but it's a very useful thing. It keeps people civil.
Yeah.
It makes it like makes it possible for you to go out into the dark without worrying all the time, which is not same level of worry for you and for me. It's a lot more easier than for you. हामी दुईजनाको बिचमा नै त्यस्तो डिफरेन्सेस हुन्छ त्यसलाई नि रेकग्नाइज गर्नु पर्यो.
That was deep, human. The whole range.
तिमी राइटर बन्ने हो भने, तिमी पोएट बन्ने हो भने, तिमीले if we had multiple lives, if it were at all true कि you can have like multiple lives, अर्को जन्ममा आउन मिल्छ भन्ने कुरा टोटल बुलशिट नभए तिम्रो जिन्दगी एउटा मात्रै हो. You only have one like head.
Okay.
Inside which resides the brain, you know, जसमा चाहिँ एउटा माइन्ड छ. तिमीले त टोटल एक्जिस्टेन्सलाई क्वेसन गरिराख्ने एबिलिटी छ भनेर त मान्नु पर्यो नि. कि त छैन भनेर तुरुन्तै बिकम भक्त. You'll never be a person. You'll always remain a slave. भन्ने मान प्रभुलाई मानिहाल Prabhu is the Lord. The moment you begin calling something your Lord, you are the slave. You're never a full person.
Okay, and
but if you want to be a full person, how does that to a writer open?
Yeah.
Unless you at least allow you are capable of living in a world without an overlord over you, how will you begin to look at the world clearly without the rules set by another mind for you? If you are the one mind that's looking at this world, like our mind available no ala sayad. So you are then forced to see the extremes of beauty and the extremes of ugliness, the extremes of good and the extreme of evil. जेसुकै भन त्यो कुराहरूलाई हैन, the infinite of what is possible भन्ने तिम्रो एउटा माइन्डले कन्सिभ गर्न सक्नु, ट्राई गर्नु पर्यो नि त, सक्छ भने हैन, ट्राई त गर्नु पर्यो.
So it's like you become the creator of your world, which is...
No, that's not what I was saying.
Oh no, I went on a tangent.
Tangent भन्दा sort of like त्यो भनेको हैन, you're not the creator, त्यस्तो खालको पनि हैन कुरा चाहिँ. तर at least begin to admit कि you have a mind that's capable of understanding things. Not being like, this whole area will forever remain out of my imagination to reach.
That you're capable of writing that which you are thinking you can write. You can't write.
तिम्रो माइन्डले कन्सिभ गर्न सक्छ भने राइटिङ त अर्कै कुरा भयो, पेन्टिङ अर्कै कुरा भयो हैन, क्रिएटिङ एन आर्टिफ्याक्ट अर्कै कुरा भयो. त एटलिस्ट लाइक कन्सिभ गर्न सक्छ, एटलिस्ट एम्पथाइज गर्न सक्छु म, एटलिस्ट म त्यो गमला बन्न सक्छु, एटलिस्ट म यो पानी खाली पानीको ग्लास बन्न सक्छु भनेर तिमीले एन्टरटेन गरेनौ भने नि, you will never go down that path. You'll forever imagine there are barriers beyond which my imagination can never go, beyond which my creative abilities will never be useful.
That makes it simple. we went all the way back in time and in multi-dimensions.
So it's like, say तिमीले simplify गर्नु खोज्यो भने what you're doing is giving yourself permission to be the creative mind, not the creator. The creative mind. तर कति आजकलको कन्भर्सेसन्सहरुले चाहिँ पहिला नै लाइन्सहरु तान्दिन्छ के, you're not allowed to think like that, you're not allowed to imitate that voice, you're not allowed to occupy the space that is imaginary. You may only ever report from your own experiences. तिमीले भनेको कुरा जुन थियो नि, I can't think like another person one area. For me that is weird. For me that is weird.
But when you think about it, we do think about other people as well.
If you didn't think about other people, you wouldn't be the kind of person you are.
True.
Empathy absolutely huncha, हैन? Even perfect evil requires being able to imagine the world from the point of view of your victim. If you were a serial killer that like thrills in taking the lives of innocent people, you have to have a conception of what that innocent person's life is like that you can snatch away. So त्यो उतापट्टि नर्मली फिट हुन्छ होला के,
अर्को एक्सट्रिममा पनि.
But regardless, what we're just doing is imagining the world through other people's point of view, their minds.
True. Yeah, true. We can.
We can, and we absolutely must. Like people don't give themselves the permission to say that out aloud.
True.
This is what I think.
Absolutely. You had mentioned अघि पनि अलि भन्नु भएको थियो. What was the research process को बारेमा अलिकति you've told us about from the book. But how was कति धेरै folktales पढ्नु भयो होला? You probably read a lot more.
Nope.
No?
I don't see, I write fiction, and a lot of times people think I have to go and collect things, and then I'm not reporting on things. When I read the folktales after watching the play. But while I was watching the play, I wasn't really watching the play. I was watching the people around me. Who were watching the play. Who were from there. And I was trying to sort of understand what impact Actors Studio play brought there by the book bus for that one afternoon in outside of this high school in Deokuri was having on the villages who had shown up to watch the play. मेरो लागि त्योबाट त इन्ट्रेस्टिङ थियो मेरो लागि रिसर्च त्यो थियो मेरो लागि sort of to be sitting there and sort of like their sense of awe, their sense of recognition. And for me, that was what delighted me. मेरो लागि tonic त्यो थियो के so त्यसपछि बल्ल मैले folktales खोजेर त्यो दुईटा folktales पढेको. I had already decided to write the story.
When you were watching the play? While you were watching the play?
Because I saw how it affected people. I know. I was like, wow. There's something in the way the story is being told. And the actors also did a fabulous job. The way Anup had like structured the play was when they did it in Naval Parasi, the audience would show up. The narrator would be like, you know what? We didn't have the actors here.
Okay.
We need to go find them. And then a guy would get on a boat and then go looking for the actors. And they cross the length of Narayani, get the actors, come back, and the audience would wait, right? In Dang, I didn't see that performance in Naval Parasi. But in Dang, same thing, but we had to go down one side of the village, passing through the village, looking for the actors, and then bringing them back. And in that process, you go through the village. You see not just like the audience members around, but then the curiosity on the faces of the people who come out of their homes to watch what's happening. And that is what a story does in a community in a sense. Okay? It opens like windows for all to step in, for new meanings to be shown through that. And that's why I absolutely loved. And I was like, wow. And
then the book is here now.
Yeah,
that's a different kind of observation.
Why does one write? Right? Okay, to build the scaffolding of the self. So like that's what I was doing also while I was watching the thing. No, I was building myself as somebody who now has great empathy for a culture and a place and a language of which I am an absolute outsider. So I can't claim anything as mine from the culture, but I have taken a story and brought it to the world, and in a small way sort of brought it back to them through the translation also. Yeah. There.
Wow. It just goes
गफाडीलाई बोलाएपछि गफ सुनिनु पाइन्छ त्यही त के बोल्दिन्छ
wow म चाहिँ के सोचिरहेको थिएँ भने it's like so many entities are involved. It takes a village to write a book भन्छ नि त भन्दैन
तिमीहरू यो रिसर्च इन्स्टिट्युटमा बसिरहेको भएर you think the process of doing the research, finding a material is far more important than the process of sitting down and producing the work. So as somebody who's like always focused on writing fiction or translating fiction, मेरो लागि चाहिँ that other part is more important. Okay? Just wandering, not like deliberately.
Not necessarily doing like quote unquote research.
So clearly what comes out is also useful in some way, right?
There are many ways of writing. Kasaiले research garछन्, kasaiले perhaps your way is sitting on the table and researching in imagination, which is also just as valid. I think that is.
I think the just as valid भन्ने कुरा is problematic. Okay? किनभने that is still trying to sort of okay.
यो होइन भन्न खोजिरहेको भयो in some way. I see.
Yeah. हाम्रो स्टाइलमा चाहिँ होइन तिमी तिम्रै स्टाइलमा गर ल भने जस्तो हो नि त त्यो त, which is a way of like still sort of looking down upon it. I don't really care. Like for me, every time I sit down to write something new, it's a process of discovery for me. It has nothing to do with the reader. It begets a reader only when it goes to an editor.
So it's for yourself, kind of?
I think fundamentally writing is that.
Mm.
I have recently written 3 little personal books for children aged 9, 7. I know. They gave me a list of people that must be in the story. They gave me the title of the book, and then I wrote 50 pages, 60 pages children's adventure books for them.
Okay. They as in the publishers or
no,
the kids?
The kids.
Oh.
अनि त्यहाँ पुल्चोकको फोटोकपी पसलमा गएर कभर सभर बनाएर 3-4 कपी प्रिन्ट गरेर लगेर गिभ इट टु देम हैन त्यो गर्ने बेलामा I am laughing so hard when I'm writing this stuff. I am so delighted. And I'm having so much fun. Because clearly I'm writing for the child in me, not the other child. And it's fun.
Wow. Do we get to read that?
Yeah, email
okay.
Fun to, it's for little
it's for kids obviously.
Fun
but as a kid, I'm also a kid.
Yeah.
We're all kids at the end of the day. Wow.
We're everything.
We're everything, yes. Again, going back to
snail.
That spectrum of experience that we can have. What title your podcast? Would you like to read us something? Budhani Bhatta?
Honestly, I'd rather you read it.
I read it?
I don't like the sound of my own voice.
Oh my, okay, I can read it.
I'm not used to reading. Plus, you get to then choose the excerpt that you want to read, which will be instructive for me also. Interesting.
Wow. This is interesting. Spoilers. Oh my god, no.
There are some segments that people get scared.
There are some heartbreaking moments. But there are also some very fun, nice moments.
So thank you for reading it.
Okay, I hope it sounds okay.
I'm sure it will.
The chapter is called The Crow. This nest visible above, high up on this tree ringed by flowers with tiny red petals, and from where a single blue feather now spirals to the ground, was once home to a couple of crows. And Budhani was one of their brood. A lifetime ago. Yes, it was exactly a lifetime ago. This tree had been Budhani's first home. She had been young and beautiful and fiercely intelligent. Here she had been fed and groomed by a mother, and she had jostled with lively brood of siblings for her share of grub worms and ripe fruits. She had huddled in the warmth of her parents' wings through cold rains in January and preened herself in the new sun of March. How she remembers so much from another life in which she wasn't even a young woman, but a young crow with the darkest down over sharp beak. Close your eyes and try to remember, and grief from another lifetime will descend to you. It may be the grief of a past life or the griefs in many more lives yet to come. It may not come as a thing sharp and clear, but there will be enough of a shape or suggestion that you, like most of us learning something for the first time, will understand that there is truth in it. Grief sticks to a soul forever. Even as joy evaporates, like the morning mist lifting from the banks of a grey river, grief becomes both the weight which we ferry between lifetimes and the anchor that fixes us to this world. By the evening, we forget the happiness of the morning, but grief from another lifetime sticks to us. Without sensing that truth, the words on this page or this old tale would mean nothing. Budhani had hatched a crow chick, brought up to be clever and resourceful, and had lived on her own ever since her mother had gently pushed her out of her birth nest. At first, Budhani cawed in terror as she ground rushed upwards to meet her, but a fierce light in her mind told her to flap her wings as hard as she could, breathe as quickly as she could, and no matter what, keep her eyes open. Her siblings fell helplessly to the ground and cawed for their mother. Budhani flapped her wings so hard that the ground didn't punch her like she had feared it would. It gently tickled her with the tip of a soft, dew-beaded blade of grass. Once again, because the fierce light in her mind told her to, Budhani flapped hard, until filling her with a soaring lightness she had never known before, she lifted away. The weight with which the ground pulled at her dissolved. Instead, the openness above picked her up and she pushed to the sky.
Thank you.
Wow. Are you excited about the book going out into the world?
That's a difficult question. Kinobane. I wrote this so long ago. I've read this so many times. I think you are the newest reader that I know of this book. What is exciting is if people find it interesting. And that's also kind of agreed as a writer. I don't know if I'm excited as such. I'm just glad it's out there. I'm more excited that this book exists in Tharu also. I'm more excited about how people reading it in the Tharu language will receive it or react to it. I expect people will have nasty things to say to me without ever having read it also, about having taken from another culture. I really don't care about that. I just hope that young people reading it find it useful in some way. I hope it doesn't make people too sad.
Hopefully not.
Right? There's things in it though, like a little.
But that's not the whole thing.
That's not the whole thing. Yeah. But yeah, it's out there, Abba. And it no longer belongs to the writer or the publisher when it's out there, so, or the editor, Prajni Thapa, who worked on it quite a bit. Yeah, but it's up to the readers to make of it what they will.
True. The death of the author, Wansani. Is that scary?
No, it just means I get to work on another book.
Wow, okay. So, अर्को book.
अब यो त like पुछेर फालेको पसिना जस्तो बन्छ क्या after it goes out into the world. अब there's nothing I can do to alter anything in that. No, it's there. Shakya.
How do you reach that stoicness one?
It's not stoicness. It's just recognizing that that's what it is. If you sit around like being bothered by a book that you deliberately pushed out into the world, that's some form of like self-indulgence or mental illness. Pointless.
Quick question before we move to rapid fire. So the Tharu tales, Onita, you were saying Agipani that it's a culture you don't know very well, but you've written about there, and you were also saying that people might have things to say about that without reading or knowing or. What do you think about that?
Which are the two parts? We'll separate them.
Okay, the first part is like taking from a culture that you don't know very well.
So I use the word taking deliberately, but did I take? If two folk tales over 6 pages in a book can become the play that one of the Actors Studio and actors from Actors Studio put up, that was very exciting for us. And taking it back to the same like place, from where the story originated. We were not thinking of taking, we're thinking of augmenting it. We're thinking of like how Srijana like resources, how book pasco resources, actor stories resources, Mero yo Kopadi resource maybe in a small way, can then build something that can be brought back, right? You like your trepidation to know about you're taking or appropriating. When I say it's because of the way other people are talking about things. It's nothing to do with my sense of guilt or like. I think after reading the book, I doubt if people will say that. Whoever wants to say it, like, I don't know why they would say it, but maybe they will. Because they'll have to see the way it's been written, no? So I do anticipate some people, without fully understanding the context, without fully understanding how the book came about to be, will be like, oh, kina leheko? त्यो सधैँ हुन्छ एन्ड आई रियली डोन्ट केयर अबाउट द्याट त्यसको बारेमा चिन्ता गरेर बसेर कसैले फाइदा हुँदैन मलाई एकदमै मनको गहिराइदेखि नै मन नपर्ने कुरा चाहिँ एनी वे अफ talking about the arts, the creative field, where you begin to say कि you as a person, because of this and this thing that builds you up, are forbidden from talking about this other group that you are an outsider of. Well, again, I don't believe anybody is an outsider of any other group. Because, like, I believe we are, especially people who sit down to create work, contain in them everybody else on this idea. I know that sounds too grand. I know that. I know it sounds too a little bit convoluted pani, but also conceited pani. All of that. I know that. So to deny garera jun ghata lagcha ni, where you say like you reduce everybody to only reporting their own realities. त्यो गर्दाको संसार जुन बन्छ नि जसमा you're not permitted to wear clothes from another culture. You're not permitted to what? Like eat food from another culture? Like what's the extreme of it? त्यस्तो पनि संसार हुन्छ र भने नि. Which culture has ever been without taking from others, right? म त्यो खालको कुरा त्यो पोलिटिक्स मलाई इन्ट्रेस्टिङ लाग्दैन. त्यो एकदमै न्यारो हो होइन. फाइन देयर इज एन एक्सट्रिम होइन जसमा चाहिँ रेकगनाइज गरेर इट्स नट गो देयर भन्न सक्नुपर्छ. हाम्रो न्यारो कन्टेक्स्टमा संसारलाई हेर्ने देश न्यारो नै हो. हाम्रोमा जेन्डर र कास्टको बिचको इन्टरसेक्सन जुन छ नि नेपालको केसमा द्याट इज अ स्पेस जसको बारेमा फ्रिभुलस हुनु हुँदैन, राइट? But like if you're going to insist कि ethnicity is more important than gender or caste को कुरा नेपालको कन्टेक्स्टमा नि I would have a difficult time agreeing with you. होइन किनभने नेपालको एथनिसिटीको कुराहरूलाई अलिकति इन्टरप्रेट गर्न थाल्यौँ भने we find that there is no ethnicity that is like a monolithic हुन्छ नि. तर फेरि पर्सिक्युसनको हिस्ट्री त छ, we know that, right? त्यसलाई इग्नोर गरौँ भने होइन मैले. Just that while also being sensitive to all of that, let's not be the kind of people who say ki you are not allowed to speak about this one thing because
of so and so,
because of your gender, because of your sexuality, which is what like the loudest voices are भन्ने त्यही हो हैन. त्यो if you forbid people from imagining the lives of others, you are creating a barrier for them to practice their empathy generally. If you forbid people from practicing their empathy, you'll never create solidarity when it comes to standing up for injustice. You want to expand the empathy of people, not begin by saying like you are forbidden to imagine being this other person. Plate ma bhako 9th mover 10th mover imagine गर्न perfectly fine हुने. तर आफ्नै सोसाइटीमा भएको अर्को जेन्डरको अर्को सेक्सुअलिटीको मान्छे चाहिँ इमेजिन गरेर त्यसको बारे लेख्न नपाइने भन्न थाल्यौँ भने, अर्को जातको अर्को रिजनको मान्छेको बारेमा नलेख भन्न थाल्यो भने नि, the kind of world that will eventually create is not the kind of world I would want to live in. You know?
Yeah.
Those lines, त्यो बनाउँदा कलमको मसिसकिन्छ and you will still find new lines to draw. अनि खुट्टा चाहिँ कहाँ राख्ने नि?
True. Yeah. Thank you for that expansive answer. Shall we move to rapid fire?
Sure.
Okay. If you were not a writer, what would you be?
I always wanted to be an actor.
Oh, interesting. Do you have a favorite time of the day to write?
Immediately after I wake up, whatever the time that is, a cup of coffee, sit at the desk until you get really hungry.
Oh, okay. Do you have a time limit or word limit? Ki hunger?
No. It's usually either hunger or because I desperately have to go to the bathroom. No, I sit and type and type and type and type. And that's when I first break.
I see. So type भन्नु भयो. So I'm guessing you like typing or writing with hand?
हातले लेख्न छोडेको त धेरै वर्ष भयो. I have a very specific font
Oh,
You know,
okay.
I change the background color of the page Microsoft Word to suit my mood, or I'll indulge myself with a playlist when I have the right type. To inner music legacy, I find that useful.
What is inner music?
If you read beautiful prose, it comes with the music in it. यसको आफ्नै cadence हुन्छ, rhythm हुन्छ, rhymes हुन्छ हैन. And that's how you recognize it. Oh, this person must have written this style. त्यसको लागि it helps to sort of know the mood.
Okay. You were saying you have a specific font. Which font is it?
It's very generic. Garamond.
Oh.
I love Garamond.
Okay. Just.
I can edit in other fonts, but I cannot write in other fonts.
Oh.
त्यो तिमीले जुन handwriting को कुरा गरे नि, I may have subconsciously replaced my handwriting with a font. So that now when I write in that, it looks like it's my writing to me.
Oh. No, I also like playing with fonts.
Yeah.
त्यो कस्तो यो फन्ट चाहिँ मेरो जस्तो लाग्छ कि अहिले I usually write Google Docs मा लेखिरहेको हुन्छु कहिले काहीँ अनि त्यहाँ चाहिँ स्पेक्ट्रल भन्ने फन्ट छ एउटा. I don't know. It's very similar to Times New Roman, but it feels like that's my font. So yeah, makes sense. You were saying you sometimes listen, like you have a playlist. So what do you listen to?
I have a few Bollywood 90s.
Oh.
Hardcore like Bollywood 90s Kumar Sanu, Udit Narayan, Alka Yagnik types ko. I have a playlist that's songs in languages I don't understand. And then I have a few other playlists like Mehdi Hasan, Leonard Cohen, Bob Dylan, Jagjit Singh, Narayan Gopal types. Depending upon, let's say Sunyo Bane, you get distracted because especially Mehdi Hasan for me and Leonard Cohen, the words and the way they sing, especially Mehdi Hasan singing some ghazals, it's so like, beautiful कि you do get distracted. त्यो भयो भने चाहिँ साजनको गाना, दिलको गाना लगाए हैन, जुन चाहिँ चाइल्डहुडदेखिको ब्याकग्राउन्ड नोइज हो र डिस्ट्र्याक्ट चाहिँ हुँदैन एज अ वाइट नोइज लाइक इट्स इन द ब्याकग्राउन्ड.
Oh wow, Bollywood 90s. That's so interesting. Do you have a writing advice you follow?
An advice that I give to others that I follow?
No, an advice somebody gave you.
A rapid fire. I'm trying to think of the last time somebody gave me writing advice that I actually stuck to. No.
Okay, no is also an answer. Would you like to give a writing advice to someone listening?
मलाई writing advice माग्नु मिल्दैन कि.
Why?
मलाई writing workshop माग्नु पर्छ. You know what I mean? Like मैले एउटा कुरी एक लाइन भन्न सक्ने मान्छे पाए त अर्कै मान्छे हुन्थ्यो होला.
Okay. Please contact for writing workshop.
That's what I mean. Some of the useful is like sit and practice. But that's true of all arts and all crafts. Recognize when your craft has jumped into the art. I think learning to be a better reader of your own work is very useful. But I don't think I've reached that yet, so I can't give that as an advice, as if I have the knowledge. I'm not a very good reader of my own work, which is a horrible thing to say, because then you become very self-indulgent.
Wow. Any books you'd like to recommend?
Kasto khalko?
Any that comes to the top of your mind. Maybe to complement reading Budhani, yeah, maybe.
Actually, my class 8, in some ways the same age that I have written the book for, I discovered Our Ancestors by Italo Calvino. त्यसमा 3 novella छ. Baron in the Trees, The Cloven Viscount, अनि The Non-Existent Night भन्ने. Italo Calvino को त्यो stories really, like, for the first time in life, I realized that writers were allowed to do that. Write fantastical kuraharu.
Oh.
Because I had stopped reading children's books and I was trying to read adult novels. Buddha Mansilje sports types, but my mind wasn't prepared for that. So in these books, it's still, these are fables, these are fantastically written stuff. Italo Calvino, and I was like, you're allowed to write a sentence like that?
So that was when you were in grade 8th, when you discovered.
School ko library ma थियो. School ko library ma couple of shelves थियो, Maithili kitab थियो, couple of shelves Newari kitab थियो. A whole wall was Hindi, you know. So it was quite a rich reading khasma environment. So that book really, really, I think it sort of shaped my morality पनि जस्तो लाग्छ मलाई. One of the stories, you know. मैले यस अहिले नै कतिचोटि एम्पथीको कुराहरू निकालिरहेको छु. The way one can imagine the world खालको कुराहरू. The non-existent nightमा 3टा characters छ and that are amazing. One is a man so mad, whatever he looks at, he immediately believes he is that. So sometimes he hangs from a tree like a pear. Sometimes he thinks he's a soup pot, you know. A non-existent knight. There's a knight whose sense of self is so strong that he doesn't actually exist.
The other character.
There's another character. Sense of self is so strong. It's an empty armor, you know. But the will is so strong to survive. It exists. Right?
Oh wow!
So these things.
I want to read that.
Yeah, you should. Everybody should. Our ancestors wanted a collection of Mosa, or
non-existent night bunny.
Chutti novella or Baron in the Trees भन्ने छ.
Okay.
अनि Cloven Viscount भन्ने छ.
Okay, wow. I'm going to read that. Yes. PBR mahali मैले. That brings us to the end.
Well, thank you.
Yay, thank you so much.
Sorry about
coming.
all the meandering, the confusing.
It was deep.
So if you invite a Gavhadi fiction writer, then this is what you get. So I didn't talk about any of my politics, any of my engagement with the social aspect of writing because all that is in the book. So I'm not interested in that part. I was just interested in talking about the craft of it. You allowed me that opportunity, and for that I'm thankful.